I wasn't gonna, but clearly I did, because today we're looking at Legacy Vector Prime. I was fully intent on skipping this guy, but about a week ago, as of this recording, so probably well over a month by the time this goes live, Diana and I were in our larger local Target, the one that actually carries stuff, and they had some actual decent selection of Transformers figures on the shelves, not like the 3 core figures that have been on the same shelf for over a month now at our smaller local Targets. Still kind of salty about that, but anyway, they had some Vector Primes among other things, and he just looked so handsome in the box, and I just couldn't resist, because it just looks so good, and like I know the core mold is cool. And yeah, now I have Vector Prime, and he is kind of great. But anyway, yeah, I got him, and this is absolutely the Legacy G-Axis mold with, some obvious new molding, new tooling, different paint deco, that kind of thing. But for what it is, I think it actually works for Vector Prime pretty well. I know there are lots of complaints about how inaccurate it is to his original Cybertronian figure and show model, but like it hits a lot of the same broad strokes, and I don't know, I feel like people are being a little too harsh on accuracy, because like I don't know, like it is not accurate in like a 1-to-1 thing, but like you can tell this is Vector Prime. You can tell this is supposed to be Vector Prime's vehicle mode. There are other things that I think would be nice, like if these fin bits were bigger, if they could fold up, if they had the red along the trim, that would all be nice. The tail fin feels unnecessary. I tried seeing if I could transform this thing by leaving the tail fin tucked in, and it doesn't really work, just because of how this all comes together. But yeah, it still is very clearly, at least to me, Vector Prime. And this is a gorgeous figure. Like, it's a lot of really nice paint detailing on this thing in a lot of really nice and intricate new molding. It looks really good in that specific way. The vehicle is this space whatever with the fins on the side, which, like I said, could be bigger, could be a little like burgundy trim or whatever, but it looks the part. Whoops. Still had it on white balance. Let's zoom out. Okay, there we go. But yeah, there's lots of really nice intricate trim. The deco looks really good. I like the dull gray that they used for most of the plastic here. It's actually really nice. And we'll bring in G-Axis for a comparison later, but yeah, it's a decent, for what it is, looking vehicle mode. And the robot mode also looks good for what it is. Again, not 1-to-1 accurate, but what figure in Legacy has been perfectly accurate, honestly? Like, all of them have little things that are a little bit different, because that's the whole thing. But I don't know, I don't want to harp on that too much. But yeah, vehicle mode looks good for what it is. I did play around with fan moding it at one point. Got the sword plugged in here, which we'll look at more later. And also, there's the cyber key that it comes with that tabs in to the top here. It's just the 2 slots there, and there are 2 little tabs on the sides of the key, and it plugs in like that. But we're just going to leave these 2 accessories off to the side and look at them later. But I did do like a fan mode thing with this guy before, where basically what you can do is you can take these pieces here that rotate and rotate them up. And what I did before was I actually popped these pieces off and swapped them around to the other side, but I'm not going to do that for right now, so I'm just going to like broad strokes show you what I was doing. But basically I swapped them so that the fins could go on top, and I actually kind of think that looks better. I know it's not accurate to the vehicle mode, but I think looking at this just as a space vehicle and not as a vector prime alt mode, I kind of think that it looks better with the fins up top. So like that's a thing you can do with fan moding. But there's also more you can do with fan modes, which we'll get into in the robot mode, which I think actually really helps with these things too. So yeah, I don't know. That's for what it is. As I said, looks good, and I have no significant problems with it other than the fins being a little small and not enough paint detailing on the fin bits. But I have more stuff to say when we get to the robot mode, so let's move things along. Here is everything for our size comparisons, and it's a Legacy Voyager. It is the G-axis mold, so it's the same exact size. Maybe not same exact size, but it's the same general size as G-axis. There we go. So yeah, definitely bigger than a Deluxe. And now we'll bring in G-axis. So here is G-axis with Vector Prime. They are more or less the same size. G-axis is a little bit longer just because of the little red nose tip, and the wingspan goes out a little further, but they're more or less the same size. Also, G-axis here has repro labels, Vector Prime does not. I am tempted by the repro label set that he comes with, because I don't think all of the stickers are necessary because the deco on this guy is actually really solid, but it does come with shin covers, which change the wiring up here, which is more relevant in robot mode, but yeah, that's kind of tempting. But anyway, here's how they compare, and you can see some core similarities between them, including that tail fin, which makes more sense here than here, but I think Vector Prime, for the most part, does a good job of hiding the fact that he is this. And I am okay with that. And of course, we gotta do the all-important and essential size comparison with the duck tank. Alright, transformation time. But of course, real quick, before we do that, have a coffee, have a Patreon. Links to both at the end of the video, as well as down in the description. Otherwise, like, comment, share, subscribe. Any of that kind of support would be cool. So now to transform this guy, I also wanted to mention right before I do that, I just realized this bit here going across the nose looks a lot like the sword. I just think that's kind of a neat detail. Anyway, yeah, to transform this guy, it's almost exactly the same as G-axis. So first thing is untab these struts from the side. There's just these little hook tabs here that they hook into. So untab these. Bring the struts up, like so. Now, going to untab the arms. They just tab into, there's like these tabs here that tab into the backs of the thighs there, and these bits here actually they kind of click in right around here, so just kind of pull those out. And we'll just accordion these out a little bit more to get them out of the way. Now we're going to split the back and then disconnect this from here. You basically need to kind of twist in and pull up and then bend the knee, because the way this works is this piece ends up going under this piece, but this piece has to go under this piece. So let me zoom in so you can see more of what I'm talking about. You can see this is kind of tucked under this little peg here. So you kind of want to twist and pull so that it can pop off of here while sliding out from under here. The G-axis figure did the exact same thing. Okay, now I'm going to just finish up the legs. To untab this section from the little booster and bring this down. Before putting all this together, you also want to rotate the foot down, because that foot will get in the way of this. Then this comes in, and basically this strut tabs into the back of the knee, and then this little groove here will go over this piece on the inside of the leg here. And it is not the most secure connection, but it's secure enough. And then finally the tail fin can flip around and up and into the spot there. You could probably, I think these are just clipped in. Let me see on this one. Yeah, they're just clipped in, so you could probably just remove the, like pop out the tail fin and not even worry about it for vehicle mode. And I feel like that's, I don't know, I don't necessarily think that this is a super important thing. Like, yeah, it's a little bit gappy if you take that off, but I don't know. If you, I just feel like if you wanted to, you probably could just pop the tail off if it really bothers you in vehicle mode. I'm not all that fussed about it, but that's a thing. Anyway, to raise the camera a bit so that this can fold up, and these will just continue to fold back. These bits here can fold out. Now, for the torso, it's like a lot of this is the same, but there's just a little bit of difference with the torso and the shoulders. So what you want to do with this bit that the head is attached to, you can kind of, like I find you can push from this side and pull down here a little bit to disconnect all this, and that's fine. Now with G-axis, I would always like plug things together and do the transformation that way. With Vector Prime, you don't quite want to do it that way because the way this is set up, you can see that the tab for the plate that the head sits on actually pokes through this peg hole. So you don't want to try and shove this in there while that's in that spot. You actually want to get the head plank out of the way first. So pull this out. And when you're going into vehicle mode, when you push this in, it kind of stops here. You can actually push it until it clicks and actually goes all the way down. And that's what causes that to sit inside the little peg hole. So yeah, you want to pop that out. Then this can peg in. Just one particular thing to be aware of. Now with this piece, this comes down and rotates 180 degrees. And then this will swing down, and these two little slots up here will peg in right here above the waist. And that will tab in there. Might as well rotate the waist while we're at it. Then this can come up, and just like G-axis, will all tab together, and this little tab will go underneath the front section of the torso here to keep that head plate from moving around. And then these, just get those out of the way. These hinge up and up. Fold out the fists, just like G-axis, so open the door and just flip out fists. And same deal on this side. Open up the door, flip out the fists. And then the shoulders do actually have these shoulder pads. You want to bring these up and keep going because they will click into place. There's a tiny little slot on the underside there and a tiny little tab on the top of the shoulder. That's what locks it in. And once that's locked in, that shoulder pad is not coming down until you want it to. And that is it for the basic bits of the robot, but we still have to do the backpack. Now the instructions have you rotating these bits around, and these swing down and will actually tab in. There's this little rectangular bump on the backpack plate here, and this little rectangular slot on the inside is armature. You want to bring this in until it goes over that armature and kind of locks into place, and then this can just kind of freewheel back here at an angle, I guess, to get it out of the way. This is, again, how the instructions show to do it. I'm not the biggest fan of this, but it is what the instructions show. And there is Vector Prime. And this is actually a really really striking looking figure. I mean, the mold itself, I think, is very nice looking, but like, I don't know. I know this was designed for G-Axis, but in all honesty, I feel like Vector Prime wears it better. Maybe maybe I've got different feelings about it because I don't have the same Cybertron nostalgia that others do, but I think this is the better use of the mold. G-Axis is fun. I enjoy his 90s angsty grimacing and bright colors, but I just think Vector Prime is way better. And also really clean. Like, yeah, you've got these back here, but these are kind of supposed to be here for his cape. The molding is great. Like, you get some stuff on this guy is exactly the same as what you get with G-Axis. Like, looking at, I've got G-Axis off to the side. I'm just looking at him now, and like basically from the bicep down to the fingers, like the entire arm below the shoulder is G-Axis. The legs from the toes all the way up to the hip joint is G-Axis. These little side joints for the side of the torso is from G-Axis. But the pelvis, chest, shoulders, and head are Vector Prime. And like this stuff, the stuff that is G-Axis, like the arms and at least the thighs and the sides of the chest and stuff, I feel like that's nondescript enough to, like, it doesn't need to be remolded. The main thing, and I do understand, is people's gripe with the shins because you get these wires down here. And I do understand that. In hand, doesn't bother me at all. And I feel like the burgundy that they used for the feet here kind of distracts my eye, so I don't really pay that much attention to the shins. But I do understand that this is, like, I get why this is disappointing, because Vector Prime's thing was more like gears and cogs and stuff, not wiring. But there are upgrade kits out there, and I'm sure there will be more upgrade kits out there that could probably cover those up. Not that you necessarily should have to, I get that, but like this is kind of an ignorable thing. But like the forearms and stuff like that doesn't, there's nothing about this that screams G-Axis, so it's whatever. I know this isn't accurate to Vector Prime's design because he has those like little shield gauntlet things on the outside, but it's also not like, oh, that's clearly G-Axis's forearm. But like the stuff that it hits, I think it hits perfectly. Like the chest looks great, the shoulders look great, the head looks great. I like the cape, though I don't like how it's implemented in the instructions. Because like, first of all, this thing doesn't tab in securely on this side because this just isn't as snug on this side as it is on this side. I've tightened this joint up and it helps, but it's still super easy to knock this strut out of place when I just want to bend this thing, the little burgundy bit down here. And that kind of stinks because here it locks it. Like you can see I bend this and that joint isn't moving. Here, if I try to bend it, it bends that joint before the other joint, and that annoys me. But like, and they also can kind of, like, the way this is done can get in the way of the arms, but there is a way around that, which I will go over in a minute. Yeah, like I love, as I said before, I love the colors on this, and I think the way they handled the colors and the color separation on this figure is really good. Like the way it goes from the burgundy and gray on the feet to gray on the shins, a little bit of gold in the knees. Could have been more, I think, but that still is nice. And then back to burgundy, and then gray and gold in the waist. The chest looks fantastic. Like, I love the gray and gold and burgundy combo, but then you get this circular detail in the center with the metallic blue and the translucent red orb thing sticking out. That just looks great. And in all honesty, looking at the original Vector Prime toy, this does it better. Because I've looked at pictures of the original Vector Prime, and like, on that figure, he does have the circular bit in the chest or stomach, but the entire thing is painted in like a metallic-y blue with the little orb thing in the center. And this looks so much better when you've got all these individual bits picked out so you can really see more of the molded detail in there. So yeah, this is actually better. And the shoulders are extremely nice and ornate and well carved and painted in that gold detailing with like the gray plastic and the metallic blue, and it goes all the way around, which is really cool. And the forearms are just basic, no paint on the forearms to speak of, or from the bicep down, but the separation is still there, the gray into the burgundy for the fists, or hands in this case. So that's fine. I think the Reaper label set, like I mostly want it for the shin covers, but there are some stickers I think I would apply just to change things up, or I may end up just taking my own paint to this thing at some point. Maybe, I don't know, I feel like I always say that and then never do, but I feel like maybe a little bit of gold in the forearms or biceps would be great, and maybe a little bit more gold down here in the shins and knees would be nice. But like, for the most part, the deco on this guy is really solid, and the molding is great, and the way that they use the paint that they had to bring out those details is spectacular. I don't know how they decide paint distribution on toys. I don't know if it's, I've heard that like this counts as 2 paint apps, but then on G-axis, like painting like most of the shin yellow, that counts as 1, and then the silver on the shin counts as 2. So like, I don't know if it's more based on the number of areas being painted or the amount of paint being used, because like there are a lot of individual spots being painted here. So that's a lot of individual paint apps in just this little circle. So I feel like maybe it's more tied to the amount of paint, but I just don't know. Like I said, I don't know how this works. But like, compared to G-axis in terms of individual parts that are painted, not overall amount of paint, but just individual parts, like you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, a lot, 7, 8, like just so many individual separated sections that have been painted. Vector Prime has way more paint by order of like number of spots that are painted compared to G-axis. G-axis probably has comparable, maybe even slightly more paint in terms of overall volume, but like I said, I don't know how to measure it. But anyway, the head on Vector Prime is, I think, great. I think it looks like Vector Prime to me. I mean, I'm not a huge Cybertron guy. I'm not all that well versed in Vector Prime, but he looks the part to me. The gray with the burgundy with the gold is really nice. Like, I really like how this brings together pretty much all of the colors that are used elsewhere in the figure. And like, normally I say it's nice when the head is a separate color that you don't really see elsewhere on the figure, because it helps things kind of pop. But here, I feel like it works in Vector Prime's favor because it brings all of those colors together rather than introducing a new one. Technically, I think the eyes are slightly pinker burgundy shade, so it's kind of a new color, but it's just for the eyes. But like, the gray with the burgundy with the gold does look spectacular, and then of course you get that really nice metallic blue for the face. The sculpt looks nice. He looks appropriately old and grizzled and kind of done with your crap. Looking at the expression there, I'm here for that. Now for the articulation, it's G-axis articulation. So the head is on a ball joint. You get a little bit of side to side, but not much. You can look up a bit, look down, and rotate 360. The arms can go all the way around, but this is where the cape kind of gets in the way, because like, this bit here is so in. So like, if you go to rotate it back, the elbow will hit the cape thing. If you don't have the arm out far enough, then that's just a little bit awkward, but that's what it is. Shoulders go out to almost 90. They are trigger happy style shoulders, but honestly, while I get people don't like the aesthetics of it, I've come to realize you can kind of work around them pretty well in most circumstances, so they don't bother me. You get a bicep rotation, an elbow that bends to more than 90, There we go. I had a feeling there was a little more to it. So yeah, way more than 90. The fists do rotate, and the fingers do open and close. The 4 fingers are all pinned, but they do open and close. The waist rotates. The hips can go forward to past 90, back to about there. The backpack is not getting in the way here. It's just this sculpt, like that's as far as it's going to move. Can go out to almost 90. You get thigh rotation. There is a well over 90-degree bend at the knee, and the feet can go up and down, up a bit, mostly down, and then you've got ankle tilts. So he is really nicely posable, owing to the Jaxus mold, but like it works really well for this guy. And now I do need to say I did tighten things up on this guy. This figure, you could definitely tell that it's been like the mold, like I don't know if it's mold degradation or what, but like it feels like mold degradation because there were a lot of parts on this guy that were very loose. Like this arm, the lower joint here for the transformation, this bit, it was loose enough, like it wasn't flopping, but it was loose enough that if I did this and then went like this, it would pull that down before the shoulder actually came down. So I had to tighten that joint. The torso, it didn't actually, this bit in the stomach area didn't actually tab in very well. It was kind of loose. So I had to tighten up those pegs, and now they hold a lot more securely. The rotation for this piece for the torso, that spin when going into vehicle mode, that was also loose, so I had to tighten that up. The struts back here were loose, both up here and down here on both sides, so I tightened those up. This rotation was loose, so I tightened that up. And the ankle tilts were loose, so I tightened those up. And the thigh swivels are also kind of loose, but I don't mind the thigh swivels being loose because I feel like that's not really going to cause any kind of problems with stability or posing. But yeah, those are the things that I tightened up on this guy. Once I tighten them up, he's like really nice, really, I don't know, really satisfying to mess with. And before we launch into the accessories, I also want to talk about that cape because there was a user on TFW that posted something. It's like a fan mode that I think is fantastic, and that's what I've been doing for this guy. I don't know how. I'm going to try to remember to post the name here for who came up with this because this is not my idea. I want to emphasize that. But yeah, basically just fold these out. And then instead of folding things up like this, you can rotate these pieces around and then fold this, like rotate this back in, and you want to get the little grooves on the end of these tucked around this gray strut. So this folds in and kind of tucks into there. And that, I kind of feel like makes for a better cape. And do it on this side too, fold that in, get that tucked in there. And you can also rotate this bit to kind of adjust the angle of the way that hangs. But like doing it like this, it still reads as a cape. I feel like it reads as a more effective cape. And it sticks out. It does stick out a little bit, but like I don't think it sticks out much further than it did before. Just now it's more up here than down here. And it's so much better in terms of the articulation because now it doesn't get in the way of the arm like it did before. So yeah, that's how I've been doing the cape, which I do think is an improvement. Now, the accessories. He has his cyber key, which is just a tiny little representation of his cyber planet key. It's a little bit muddy looking in terms of the sculpt, I think just because of the size and the material they used. It is translucent plastic, but it feels like pretty durable translucent plastic for whatever that's worth. And it's got the sparkles in it, which is cute, I guess. And yeah, it's it is what it is. It probably could have done with some paint to make some of those details pop, but it's so insignificant and small, it doesn't really bother me. Now what you can do with this is, well, first off, there is a slot right here on the little backpack section. You can plug this in here, and that is where you can put it. It doesn't do anything, but you can put it there. Also, there's a peg on the sword that you can peg the sword into, but with this in the way and with the backpack oriented this way, you're not really going to get to do that. So I suppose you could fold the handle down and then plug it in like that. So hey, use for the folding handle. But yeah, you can store the accessories like that if you want. Come here. And you also probably noticed the two slots on either side of the stomach circle. You can use the tabs on the side of the cyber key and tab it over there to kind of mimic the gimmick that the original toy had, where you would like plug the cyber key in and cover that bit up. And it's cool that it's an option. I'm sure there are people who love this. I don't like this because it covers up this really spectacular detailing in the stomach with kind of a much worse, like not worse, but like it's so much more boring when this is covering that. So I like to leave that freed up, but it's a thing you can do. And we'll get back to this. For the sword, it is a sword. It has some nice molding around the guard, which looks a little bit medievally. For some reason, there's this little bump on the like close to the tip. I don't quite get why that's molded in there, but it's it's part of the design. It's not like they did it for tabbing it in anywhere. And this, because of the peg, you could like peg it into the forearm if you really wanted to. And as I showed, you could plug it onto the back, or you can put it in his hand, which is where I prefer to keep it. And then one other thing you can do, because there is that peg on the back, there is also a peg hole on the back side of the cyber key, so you can put these two together, and those little tabs will sit just above the guard to attach to the sword. And this is how I prefer to use the two accessories together, because I think this pretties up the sword a bit. Like, you don't really notice it that much because it's all the same color and like there's no paint on it, but I still think that it bulks out the sword a bit, and I think it works well. It also covers up the peg, which is kind of nice. And yeah, I think that is the way to go. One other thing you can do, I don't believe this is intentional, but you can do it. These fins are on little clips. You can unclip them. I feel like this plastic is sturdy enough that it's not going to break when doing that. I don't know if it'll wear out the clip up here if you do it for too many times, but like, it's a thing that you can do. You can pop these off. And the reason why that's relevant is because they're actually pegs on these, and you can peg them into the forearms. So you could give him like a shield or something like that. So you could have like a sword and shield combo, which is actually pretty cool. And this can just kind of stay hanging back there. Of course, when you do this, he loses half his cape. So you could give him the other one, but then I think it looks a little bit overwrought. But I'm wondering if you could double up these things. Probably could. Oh, no. That hole is not 5mm compatible, so you cannot plug this into that and give him just like a double shield, which is a shame. I think that would have been cool, or maybe do something like this. But yeah, can't do that. You can maybe, I don't think it'll fit here because of the various bits and the way things are shaped. Like, yeah, that peg can't really reach the peg hole effectively. But could double up on the arm bits, as I said, so you could do that. And that doesn't look bad. I do think I prefer the cape look, but I also really like the sword and shield combo idea. So I don't know. I don't know what I want. I wish that I could figure out a way to enjoy the cape while also doing the shield thing. But at the same time, popping that piece off, I feel like, is maybe not the best course of action, because eventually I think popping it off a joint where it's probably not intended to be removed from repeatedly would eventually cause damage. So we'll just tuck all of this back up, rotate this back around, and I also probably need to tighten those hips, because you may notice he likes to lean back. But it's funny because they're nice and snug going forward like this. It's just once they get to here, it's really easy for them to go back. I don't know. But anyway, one other thing I do want to address, because I almost forgot, even though everyone makes a big deal out of it, the fact that I almost forgot is more akin to my views on this thing. But the hinges back here, these are for G-Axis's leg wings. They were not removed for the sake of this figure, but that's because the entire shin, but like the entire leg assembly from here down to here is exactly the same as G-Axis. So of course they're not going to, remove these bits. And honestly, it's such a non-issue. Like, they're there, but they're so hard to notice when you're just handling the figure. Like, when I'm looking at this guy, like, even if I'm looking at him from an angle where you can clearly see those hinges, like, who's looking down there? Unless you're looking for something to be mad about, your eye is not going down there. It's more drawn to this area up in here, or even like the sword or the shoulders or something. But like this, no, that's such a non-thing. And like, it's two little hinges, but they're right by this little tab that is necessary. So it's fine. It's totally fine. Maybe someday there'll be an upgrade kit where you can like replace the entire shin, and hey, if you all want that, that's cool. But realistically speaking, the hinges are such a non-issue. It's almost funny how mad people were getting about it when the figure was first revealed, and how in hand it's just like, oh right, the hinges. I forgot that was a thing, even after messing with the figure for weeks. Ugh. Some fans just want stuff to be mad about, I swear. But anyway, there is Vector Prime. Very cool figure. As I said, this is kind of like the definitive version of this mold as far as I'm concerned. And he is based on G-Axis, so he is a very tall Voyager. It's like, Dinobot is already a relatively tall Voyager, but like height-wise, Vector Prime almost looks like a leader standing next to Dinobot, height-wise. I know he's not a leader, I'm just saying, height-wise, he looks like that. And, of course, he's going to look much bigger standing next to Deluxe. Because Deluxe. And we can bring in the original G-Axis, and Vector Prime actually kind of looks like he might be a little bit taller at the head somehow. I think it's just because the head itself is a little bit taller, while G-Axis's head is a little bit wider. But like, to the top of the torso, they're identical. And I do like how, aside from, like, the feet are the same, the thighs are the same, all that stuff, but like, that stuff's not really noticeable. It's just the shins. Aside from those shins, I feel like even looking at these side by side, you're not going to immediately notice the fact that they're derived from the same core sculpt, or the same core figure. Also, I've been noticing my G-Axis has been up on eBay for a bit, like months and months, because I've been trying to sell this guy off because I just, wanted to make room in the collection and wasn't really feeling him anymore. And while he was sitting tucked away in the box, all packed up and ready to go, I noticed that some of the plastic has started discoloring. So, like, it's not even yellowing, it's like the white is turning slightly greenish. You can see it in the hips here, in the forearms, and you can also really see it in the back here, especially this piece here next to the plank on his back. Like, this compared to this, that is some significant discoloration when you look at it that way, and that is a shame. I don't think it ruins the figure, and it's not too terrible, but like, it's just that stinks, especially because this guy's just been sitting in a box for months. So I don't like when figures do that. But yeah, there they are together, and G-Axis still looks cool. I think he's a nifty guy, but like Vector Prime, as I said, just wears the mold better. He's in my mind at least, a better looking bot and a better looking vehicle. Not to say G-Axis is bad, especially after putting Reaper labels on him, but I really like Vector Prime. And of course, got to do the all-important Duck Tank. And that does it for Legacy Vector Prime. This video is way too long for me looking at a retool / repaint of a figure that I already looked at on the channel, but what can I say? I talk a lot. But yeah, I was, as I said, fully prepared to skip this guy because I had G-Axis and had been trying to sell him for a while. I was just like, I don't need another G-Axis mold, and I don't collect Vector Primes. I don't have a connection to the figure, to the character at all. But he just looked so handsome in the store when I saw him in person. And once I got him out of the box, it was just like, this figure looks so good. There's just this aesthetic, the sculpting, the detailing, the paintwork, the color choices. It's all really good. This figure looks fantastic. And as I said, there are certain things, particularly the way it handles that circular design in the torso, but there are certain things that this figure does that I truly think it does better than the original toy. Obviously, it's not going to be the chunky lights and sounds, or at least sounds-laden, gimmicky, old-school, fun type of figure that the original toy was. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because we'd never, none of us, I think, expect that from Legacy at this point, because that's not what Legacy is. But way better articulation. The sculpting is immaculate, especially the parts that are actual new sculpting. The coloring, the detailing looks fantastic. Yeah, it's a great figure. Totally worth getting in my mind, even if you don't have any interest whatsoever in Vector Prime. That's pretty much all I've got to say. So, thank you everybody for watching. Oh, right. What do you all think of this guy, or G-Axis, or both? If you have G-Axis, I'm curious if yours is starting to show signs of discoloration, or if I'm just special. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you in whatever the next video turns out to be.